what is a helicopter parent and why is it so bad?
So I'm going to tell you two things. So the helicopter parent is the parent who's like always hovering and making sure like, oh,
that's where the term comes from.
Oh, what's happening, right? Because they're like always over top, right?
Okay.
And the reason that's problematic is that I think it's super important for your kid to struggle. And I know that that's a pretty unpopular feeling for a parent, I would imagine, but like, that's where you learn. That's where the sweet learning is when you like struggle with something or like don't get it right the first time, you have to figure out a different way. So the helicopter parents were the thing that they talked about a lot when I was very first teaching. And now what they talk about is snowplow parents. Here's a new word for you.
Ooh, teach me something.
Snowplow parent is the one that just bulldozes all the problems in front of their kids. They never have to deal with anything. When we got sent home from school, it was Friday the 13th. And it was a full moon and there was a snowstorm. It could not have been weirder, Andrew, if we had like written it into a sci-fi novel. It was so bizarre. And so we went home and they told us, we're sending you home for 2 weeks. It's just going to be an extended spring break. And
yeah.
You'll come down, you'll come back. And I think a lot of us knew like, there's no way that this is going to be done in 2 weeks. I grabbed all this hand sanitizer in my classroom and every floor so I could find and like took it home with me and a couple of books. And yeah, we never went back.
That's insane. And you teach at a larger school now is what you were just telling me.
Yeah.
So is there a law or a rule on student teacher ratio in certain states or how does that work?
I mean, I think that you always hear like the battle cry, like what you hear teachers demanding all the time is like smaller class sizes. But like I've had classes like 35 plus kids.
Really?
And freshmen. And I'm like, how am I supposed to like keep track of these kids? And like, that is not the kind of teacher that I am. You know, I try really hard to like get to know every single one of my kids on like a personal level. And I'm like, that's not possible. And like, even looking back at pictures from those years, because that was when I taught in Colorado, I'm like, I barely remember any of these kids' names. Like I just did not have that connection. It was too many.
And I guess I'm really lucky then because I wasn't in any of your classes and we've been able to keep up with each other for the last, my 10-year reunion was recently.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah. But you haven't aged at all.
I mean, a little, but
no, not at all. You're exactly how I remember you. So,
but yeah, it's been ages. I mean, like, it's been weird for me to like look back and be like, oh my God, I taught in Hawaii so long ago. Like,
yeah,
that was my roots. That was my very first teaching job, you know?
What was the biggest surprise when you got there besides the race war?
I know, right? Besides like kids fighting over
all the
race.
Fights we had every day. Yeah. People don't believe that when I was in high school, we fought so much, or not me, but like, my class.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I knew that. I knew the kids. I mean, obviously I knew kids fought. I've always taught in like what people consider like rough schools, and that's definitely my wheelhouse. But yeah, like we were talking about off camera, like my second day of my very first teaching job, there was a race riot and we had to like shut the school down. And I remember just being like, they did not prepare us for this. Like, I have no idea. I think
they always talk about freshman, like fish day, like that, the whole, I don't know if it's a real thing or not, but my freshman experience, I was nervous because of fish day. And there was a fight that broke out the very first day on a freshman. I had just moved from Kansas. And so I was the only Asian kid. And then in Hawaii, everybody's Asian. And now we're jumping the white kid. And I'm like, what is happening right now? I'm in class. So I can't even imagine you're teaching and do you break up the fights? Do we have security guards back then?
Yeah, we had security. I was not. I always have been that. I mean, I've always been that teacher that is pretty ill-advised. Well, I will jump in the middle of fights, and don't do that. That's a horrible idea.
That's my one memory of Miss Hanoa, Sherry.
Yeah.
She got in the middle of two huge dudes one time, and basically threw her leg up in her arm, and she got swallowed. Like she disappeared from the sun. God. And yeah, it was insane. Usually,
and this is like a kind of weird thing to say, but like boy fights, you usually can like get them to like if a female teacher like jumps in the middle, a lot of times will stop.
Yeah,
girls will kill each other.
Oh yeah,
I remember Mr. Nichols and oh god.
Yeah. Okay, let's bring back some names. Okay,
and they jumped in the middle of a girl fight, and the two of them came out beat to crap. Like like scratches across their faces. Their clothes were all ripped. I mean, they were like beaten and bloody.
The girls were vicious at school. But as far as teaching goes, what was your biggest learning moment coming in? You know,
man, I think learning about imposter syndrome, just like, and that has never gone away.
Let's talk about that. What do you mean by that?
So I remember, of course, like I started teaching when I was like, what, like 22, 23, man, I was a baby. And I didn't know what I didn't know, you know? And so like you walk in and you think you've got it and like, you don't got it. You don't have anything. Yeah. And you're just trying to keep your head above water. But then I also still feel like I've been doing this now for 15 years. And I'm like, I still feel like I don't have the answers. And like, I was really scared. I got asked to teach in the Master's of Education program at my alma mater. And so I left high school for a year and a half to teach at the college. And I was scared to death. Like I went out and bought brand new clothes. I was like, I need to dress like a grown up.
Really?
I was so scared that like these grad students were going to walk into my class and be like, who's this chick? Like she clearly is not going to know what she's talking about.
You still feel that way today though?
A little bit. Yeah. Cause like I teach on a staff with like someone said something in a meeting today when they're like, well, 18 years ago when we did this. And I'm like, oh my God, I wasn't even teaching 18 years ago. And so it makes me nervous where I'm like, I mean, I know my stuff. I know I'm like, I do okay, but I also definitely still get scared where I'm like, oh, I don't, there's no way you can know everything. Right. And so,
well, again, I was never in your class, so I can't say it, but everyone that I knew that was in your class says you were great.
Oh, thanks.
I feel like we had a really good teaching staff that year, or at least
we did. So. Yeah. I mean, I have looked back on that a lot and feel so lucky to that being my first teaching job.
Yeah.
Because it was collaborative. People like worked together. There was none of this like hoarding. Like some schools I've taught at, they're like, oh, I'm doing this really cool thing in my class. I don't want to tell you about it because like my kids are going to score higher on the test. I'm like,
is that a thing?
Oh, yes. Apparently.
What?
And I was so upset to teach and staff like that, where I was like, we're in this together. Like we're supposed to be working together to make this good. Like it's not a competition.
Why, can I ask, just because I don't understand, why would a teacher hold out on that? Do you guys get comped differently based on test grades?
No, but part of your evaluation, depending on the school, can be based on like how your kids perform. There's so many like controversial things in education as far as like how teachers get evaluated.
That's something that's so interesting to me now that I have a son and we're looking ahead. I mean, even looking at daycares this past year was stressful because he's coloring and I'm like, what is the curriculum for a 1-year-old? Are you kidding me right now? But I'm so thankful. I feel like he's developing nicely. But I mean, in high school, here's my opinion is in high school, kids already think they know the shit.
Oh yeah.
but that's your sweet spot. It seems like.
Yeah.
You know, why do you choose high school and not, younger kids or going back to teach, in a college setting?
Well, I mean, I guess I was wrong. Kaiwa was not my very, very first teaching job. I did a 3-month, I covered a maternity leave at the Catholic elementary school in Kaneohe.
Okay.
Saved somebody, like St. Mary's, I think.
Okay.
I taught first graders and they were so cute.
Yeah.
But I miss like having those intellectual discussions and like the light bulb moment. Man, that is the thing that teachers live for. It's like our kids struggles. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, I get it. And like, that is probably like the best thing that can happen, And so I like having conversations that are like really uncomfortable or stuff that like, I don't have the answer or there isn't a right answer. And so like, let's talk about
like
why
what?
I think that.
So how do you do that when you have class size of 35, right? How do you make it personable? Well, is that one class of 35 for one period?
One period.
So then you have, a few periods a day, depending if you're on block or whatever, right? So you're probably grading 100 kids plus a semester?
Yeah. I mean, that was in Colorado. But yeah, so I was teaching, they had A/B schedules. So 8 classes of like 35 kids. And so like trying to do any like kind of meaningful grading or assessment.
Do you know all their names?
No.
Thank you for being honest.
In the moment, yes. But like now, no, I don't know.
Oh, really? No, there were definitely times I was like, I don't think this person knows my name.
That sucks, right? Like, what a horrible feeling. Like,
it is as a kid and as a student, even now, in my professional life, if my bosses know my name, but if someone up high doesn't know my name, I'm like, am I not sticking out enough? Am I not doing what I need to do? And plus, when you're in high school, you just have no idea what you want to do to start off with. Mm-hmm. So I really give it to you because you and the English staff in particular were really good at saying, I see you. This is what we're going to do. We own it. Yeah. I mean, you guys are just so good at it, but to the kids that or feel like they're getting left behind or that they're not getting shine or they feel like that teachers don't know their name, what can they do to get your attention?
Oh man, that's such a good question. I mean, kids, see, I teach freshmen. So freshmen are at their own like special situation too, because they're even scared in general. And I think any freshman would be pissed off that I said that they're scared, right? But like, there is a level, right? I mean, like we were all freshmen too. And so like this feeling of, I don't really know. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I want to look stupid, right?
Yeah.
So like they won't ask questions in class all the time. And so what I try and encourage my students to do is like shoot me an email. If you're like not sure about something and you don't want anyone else to know, that's fine. Email me or like pop by during lunch. Come ask me for a granola bar and I'll give you one. You can ask me your question or whatever. And so like,
hold up, you're passing prison signals to your
yeah, I taught Juvie, remember?
You did teach Juvie.
The so number funny. Of kids I feed on the daily is a lot.
I feel like we never had that before. I don't think I ever had. I don't know if email was even big enough of a communication method back then, 10 years ago, which is silly for me even saying. But
probably,
but I don't know if I even thought about coming by during lunch. Like I think the first thought was, hey, which one of my friends can help me out if I'm going to ask a question? Mm-hmm. But then thinking back, some of my friends were not the smartest. I probably should have just came to your office hours. But that's some really
there are office hours. That's the other thing. Most high schools don't do office hours, right? That's a college thing.
They don't? Mm-hmm. I feel like we ate lunch in your classroom sometimes though.
Well, like during your pep period.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Like that's usually when kids will like pop in and I'm like, where are you supposed to be? Because it ain't here. Like
maybe that's when I met you.
That's probably true.
Yeah. But I'm just nervous now because with online and distance learning, I did it in college. I understand the maturity it takes and the discipline it takes. And Elijah's one. So I'm getting a little ahead of him. But if he gets into elementary school and it's distance learning, as a parent, how do I prepare him for that? How do I get him, besides the social factors and social development, how do I get him invested in learning? I don't even know if it's pre-recorded now. I don't know if it's a slideshow. What does that look like?
All of these things. I mean, and we're still figuring it out too, to be honest. Like the spring was horrible. And like everyone keeps trying to point to that, right? About like why we shouldn't be doing distance learning right now. And they're like, it was bad. It was so awful. And I'm like, yeah, well, teachers had 2 weeks to figure out like a brand new way to teach. And so of course it was messed up. I hate to break it to you, it's probably going to be rough in the fall too. Like it's going to be better, but it's not going to be perfect,
Yeah.
I mean, for what it's worth, I hope to God that he's not in distance learning in first grade, but
what's the curriculum in first grade? Is it coloring? I know that sounds so
I remember this was forever ago, right? But like at St. Mary's, it was like, I remember them learning fractions and I was like, what?
Fractions?
I guys learned fractions in first grade.
What?
But it was like, here's a piece of pizza or like, here's a pizza.
Oh, okay.
You're going to give fair slices to everybody. How many can you make? Or,
What if my worry is that what if my son turns out to be a hands-on learner? So if they're showing the pizza, but he has to physically touch a pizza to get it, because I was that way in some areas.
A lot of kids, most people are.
Yeah. So I'm nervous now because he seems like a smart kid. His mom's smart. So
you're both smart. I'm sure he's going to
I'm okay. I mean, I was smart enough to, keep up with you and other people. And I think I don't think I was smart, but I think I asked questions. I think that's important, but I'm nervous for him though, because he may not know how to ask the questions yet. Or he may not even know he can ask the questions. Like I was saying, I didn't know we had office hours. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that was an interaction. But so 35 is a lot. 100 is a lot. What, in your opinion, for you, what is an ideal class size?
Oh gosh, if I could have like my like fantasy, like
Yeah.
15.
15?
Amazing. 20. I mean,
For the whole year?
That. Well, like per class period.
Okay.
What I'm thinking. Because there is, in high school at least, there's like a number that's too small too, right? I mean, you're going to have like a meaningful conversation or like a debate or a dialogue or like group work. You got to have like some kids, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to have too few. When I taught at the alternative school, I had really small classes. And it was about that. It was about anywhere from about like 12 to like 18-ish.
Yeah.
That was money. That was so great.
How do you cater to your class? Like, what do you do to get everybody involved? Or, because I would imagine that not all the kids coming in are at the same level. So how do you? Not even close. So I guess from a leadership standpoint, do you level it out or do you cater to the whole spectrum?
You have to meet everybody where they're at. And I think that's what causes teachers to burn out so bad. And I think that's why teachers get so pissed when people call them like lazy and like, oh, you get your summer off and all this stuff. And it's like, you have no idea.
Yeah.
You got to meet every kid where they are. Every teacher does it differently. In my class, I do a lot of group work, but not like, I always hated group work as a kid. And so I've tried really hard to change how I do group work. Because because I was that like type A dork kid who would take over the project and we would get an A, and it was only because I did all the work, right? And so I always thought that was such garbage that everybody got the same grade.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no, but like this kid has been ditching all week long.
Yeah.
And they also got the A.
Yeah.
So I work really hard to like, there's an individual grade. And so like part of the grade is like how well you guys worked as a team. And then part of the grade is like, what was the product like? And what was your contribution? And so
that's new.
I learned that at Kailua. So that's actually been like one of my things almost my whole career.
I like that a lot. I feel like there was some of that going in. And I remember there was a couple of times I'd be in group, 3 or 4 of us, and we would all be slacking. Oh. And then it'd be like the last few days. I'm like, all right, well, somebody has to do something. I was hoping it wasn't me, but now it's going to be me. And it's, for better, for worse, that's what it was. Mm-hmm. But you talked about burnout. How, I know it's real. I've seen it. How do you fight burnout? Because I know teachers that either teach for, 1 to 5 years. And then I know teachers that teach 15, 20 years plus. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to find someone in the middle.
Yeah. I think for me, what's worked for me is being able to find schools with teachers who are like on fire about what they're doing, which is a big part of why I teach where I teach. So our school right now is getting flipped on its head, which I'm like excited about. Like I was telling you before we started recording that I was in 3 meetings today, none of which I got paid for. And I have been doing this every week since we got done with school.
Yeah.
And what we've decided is like, it's all stuff that we've talked about before, but now we've got an opportunity. It's like one of the most unique opportunities that has ever happened, like at least in my lifetime and maybe even like my parents or grandparents.
Yeah.
That, like school as we know it has been shattered, right? Like no one's doing school like we were doing it, like where we grew up and did school, right? Like we've all been taken home, we're all having to come up with new ways to teach. And so we're like, so why would we go back to a system that we knew was broken? Right?
Oh,
why not? Let's fix it. Let's just, it's all the money anyways. Yeah. So like, let's build it how it should be.
Oh, now I'm excited.
Right. And so it is exciting work and it is a heavy lift.
So
it's exciting too.
What does it look like to you then? So what does it look like? If you tear it down, from a base level, just skeleton, what are the fundamental differences?
So, I mean, a lot of what we're doing right now is looking with like a racial equity lens. And it's stuff that we've already been doing at our school for a long time, but now we're able to do it, I'm hoping, in a much more like meaningful and systemic way. Because like I said, like it's all been smashed. So The meeting I had today was talking about equitable grading. And so like, what does that look like? So like, think about, I mean, I imagine you've had this experience I have where like you get an F on something and you're like, well, hell, why did I even try? You know, like I failed it or I got to do whatever that is.
I deserved every F I got.
But like some kids like genuinely like, and I've watched it and it's the most like heartbreaking thing where they are working their ass off. Can I swear on your podcast? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck.
They're working their ass off and then they still get a crap grade. And like, they're so mad and it sucks to have to give it. Right. But then you're like, well, these are the things I wanted to grade you on, or these are the skills I needed you to show me you could do. And you couldn't do it. But look how far you've come, but that's not enough. And that just is such a crappy feeling.
Yeah, it's also the idea that, you know, some people get A's very easily and someone busts their butt for a C, right? And, you know, we're rewarding them for a C. But unfortunately, when it comes time for transcripts, applications, jobs, whatever it is, they just see the C. So there really is no grade for effort is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, or like growth, right? I mean, like, yeah, it's all well and good. Like that kid who comes in and is able to like score A's right off the bat, like that's great. And I'm so glad, but where's the challenge? Where's the growth? Where's, you know, what is your story? What are you trying to learn? And I feel like we're doing just as big a disservice to those kids as we are to the kids who are like failing everything and trying.
It's huge. I mean, so how do you measure effort and challenge and growth? Yeah.
That's what the conversation's been. So like we were looking today at different like ways of assessing that aren't like a letter. And so like one of the proposals that we looked at today was, oh man, I should have pulled this document up because now I'm like trying to remember how
no, you're fine.
This meeting I just had, but like it was like you're exceeding the expectation. Those are the kids who make that A easy and like, okay, you're already nailing it. And these are the kids who are like, yes, you can do the thing that I asked you to do, and then or I need you to revise. And so instead of being like A, B, F or whatever, it's like exceeding, you're getting it, but you can still practice, or like, hey, I need you to revise this and resubmit to be able to get a passing score. In order to show me that like you get it. And so like trying to see if like maybe that helps, or like something that's like not accessible, because like there's plenty of times where you're assessing a skill like a kid just didn't even demonstrate, right? Like you're trying to figure out like, can you write like an introduction and conclusion, say, and like they didn't write one. Like they turned in like 3 body paragraphs.
Yeah.
Conclusion. Well, I don't know if you can do it because you didn't give it to me. And so in traditional grading, that's just an F, right?
So then how do you, if you're trying to measure growth, do you measure them or test them in the beginning of the school year or somewhere, or to kind of set a baseline for each person or student?
Yeah. I mean, it could also be like in each assignment too, right? Like say it's a big essay, right? So like, okay, I want you to turn in, I want to see your introduction paragraph. So just submit that. And then like we look through that and like, okay, you're nailing it and you're ready to go on to the next step, or like you're getting it. Okay, you're ready. And then like, okay, you guys need a little bit of work. And so you can give the next set of instructions to these guys and then do like individual work with the kids who need like some revision help or a little bit more extra. So you're not like, because then you also aren't giving the same instruction to all the whole class. It's like, yeah, I get this already. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
Every kid's getting what they need. Or
how do you feel about the, I don't know what it's called, but the schools that don't have like set grades? It's on skill level and they move up and down. So age isn't necessarily dictating where they are in their grade or skill level. It's based on performance and they can move up.
I mean, I think I think it has, I'm mixed to be honest on it, because part of me is like, yeah, you should be able to like, why are you being held back if you're ready to be super far, you know, but then also like to what end, right? Like if you've got a kid who's technically like, I've taught a student before who was a senior in high school, like 18 years old, literally couldn't read. And so like,
that was some of my class.
Yeah. I wondered if you knew.
Was that from my class? Yeah. I tell people that. I tell people, you know, we had a smaller school. I always thought we were a TFA school because of just how it was, but many of my friends could not read. I never did homework for them. But I remember trying to study and tutor them because I'm an awesome friend, and realizing we should probably just go drink instead because this is not working, and I don't know how to help you right now.
And like, how do you help someone? I mean, like, I remember contacting, because this was, again, like in my early teaching years, but I remember contacting my aunt who was an elementary school teacher here in Oregon. And I was like, I've got this kid who literally can't sound out a word, like cat or dog or anything. And like, how am I supposed to be teaching him to write the college essay? Like, and he wanted to learn how to read.
I think I know who you're talking about, actually.
He talked to me privately. I didn't want anyone to know. And like, as a teacher, you learn a lot of the tricks where like kid will ask to go to the bathroom when it's like getting close to their time to read, or you know what I mean? Like you start to figure out there's something going on here. But he did come and talk to me between classes and was like, hey, I actually don't know how. I'm sure you figured it out. And I don't want anyone to know, but can you teach me? And I'm like, I will figure out how to teach you. And
it's so heartbreaking.
It's impossible.
Because somebody thumbs up them, right?
Mm-hmm. But then his folks pulled him out of school as soon as they found out that like we had found out, they moved him to schools again. And so like, and that was when you looked at his transcript, that's what had happened. As soon as like the staff found out and like special education got like involved, then the parents were like, shoot, and pulled him out. And I'm like, this kid how is he going to survive? I mean,
and he's asking for help.
Yeah.
Like he's doing the things I didn't even know how to do back then. You know, he's more evolved in a sense and can't read, but that's just a skill set that he wants to learn. And it's so scary. Because one thing I'm learning now as I get older is that, and I work in management, right? So I actually don't hire a lot of people. I never look at grades, obviously, right? Because I don't ask for transcripts. But for the most part, my best performers, you know, they were earning B's and C's. A couple of them were even flunked out. And but they're the best, the smartest, hardest working because they know how to work for what they want. And that was the biggest challenge for me when I went into college was I have to study now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
that was me too. I was in the same boat. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember getting my first C ever in college and broke my heart because I worked really hard for that C and not realizing I should have been proud about the work that I put in. But then just going, my GPA is done.
And isn't that exactly what we were just talking about, right? With
yeah.
Thing where you're like, I worked my ass off for this and I only got a C, but I've been making A's in high school. Like, what the hell? And so I think that letter, right? Like that feeling that you were just
yes.
talking about with that letter, like all of that work gets reduced to one letter, any letter. Like that's kind of
it's so silly. I hope you guys figure out a better way to do it because effort should be measured somehow, or at least in conjunction with the letter, all right, or actual standard of what it is. Because again, once I graduated, no one cared anymore. By the time I hit my senior year of my undergrad, I was like, I don't even want to graduate. I get the game now. Like I get a piece of paper and they're happy. They don't care what I studied. They don't care. They don't even care if I went to class. They just want to know I got a piece of paper. And to me, that was disheartening because I learned that it was a game at some point. And it was unfortunate because I enjoy learning. I enjoy having conversations like this, seeing people get better and learn things they want to learn. And I was like, at least in the university system, it's such a wonky place. So my son is one, again, to bring it back. Is college a thing in 18 years, you think?
I don't know. I mean, it's so weird because like I never in a million years would have thought that, right? Like not even asked that question. But like this last year, I watched my alma mater close down.
No way.
Out of nowhere. And it was insane. It like threw me in this like weird way. Because like that's where I got my undergrad. I went to Concordia and that was the school that recruited me to teach for their MIT program. And I, even at the time when they shut down, had my student teacher was going through the program and he didn't even know. And so like, it just came out in the news, like they're shuttering their doors at the end of the year. And we're all like, they're one of the major teaching schools in this area. Like, what do you mean they're shutting their doors? Do you know how much money I owe to that dang school still? Like, how could they?
Wait, hold up. So what happens to your school debt?
Oh, it's still.
What?
I mean, oh God, yeah. I'll probably pay it until I die.
Different conversation. I lucked out because I picked up an ROTC scholarship coming in. And that was probably the the best thing I ever fell into from undergrad. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I got scholarships too, and like it just didn't cut it. Like I didn't.
oh, I believe it.
I got recruited with a music scholarship, and that was how I paid a lot of my tuition. But it wasn't enough to do all of it. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, and it's crazy now because I'm going back to get my MBA, but I was looking at programs. I was like, oh, I should go to check out these schools. Oh, they're how much? No, because I just want a paper. I've been working corporate America for like the last 5-7 years now. I don't need it.
I'll caution you because I can give you a little tiny sliver of advice on this one.
Yeah, please.
For the most expensive program, but I also just wanted a piece of paper because in Oregon you can only teach public school if you have a master's degree.
Yeah.
And so I had my bachelor's. That's when I taught you guys, and you get like, I think you get 8 years or so. I should know way better than this, but I think like 8 years to get your master's or 10 years.
Okay.
And I just needed the paper. I just didn't give a crap. And so I went to University of Phoenix and I learned exactly zero. I learned nothing. I'm not exaggerating. Like I could have taught those classes, and
I believe
that sounds like a lot of hubris, but like if you've been in the classroom at all, you knew this stuff already. And so I was kind of pissed off that I paid, it was the cheapest program, but I got my money's worth. Like I didn't learn anything.
Yeah.
I already knew everything that they taught us.
Do you think you would have learned something if you went with a different program?
I do. I've talked to some of my friends who went to Lewis and Clark, and they got really killer like education.
That's awesome.
So
okay,
we're
fine.
able to do all these like
switch it up.
research projects that I was like, man, I totally missed out. Like we just didn't get any of that.
All right, I'll switch it up then. You convinced me.
Don't go for the most expensive because some of it's not worth it either. But
yeah, well, the thing that I'm thinking about now for my kid when he gets older is, before it was you can get away with having just a bachelor's degree for the most part.
Right.
And now it seems like, because I hire a lot of people, if they have a master's, they're on my top of my list. And it's silly because I know it's a game. I know what it is. And at the same time, I also know that there's a certain level of qualification, supposedly, if they have this, right? And so I'm thinking by the time he gets older, he's going to have to go to school 20.
Maybe. Yeah. Who knows?
Years?
Right. Or maybe it'll be totally different. I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no idea. I never would have thought that would even be having this conversation. Like, I don't know if college is going to exist or what it's going to even look like.
What learning looks like in general. I mean, especially since everything, life skills aside, just if you want to learn something, you can Google it and there's a free class probably somewhere teaching you something. I think that's what I appreciate most when I'm interviewing people right now is, do you have any actual experience? Like, do you have any life experience, let alone work experience in this field? Because I could teach you a lot of things, but you just got to show me that you can learn first.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same way because I've been on hiring committees for teachers too. And I totally disagreed with other people on the committee where they're like, oh, but this guy has all this experience. I'm like, who gives a crap? Do you meet that girl? She's amazing. She's on fire. She's like excited about it and like wants to learn. I want to work with her. I don't want to work with that guy.
Yeah, that's 100% right. I knew we were here. So, okay. Why is it then, let's sideways here. Why is it that I want your pay to be 6 figures plus, but it's not?
Oh God!
Because teachers always use the term, and I think it's funny because I was in the Army. They're like, "Yo, we're in the trenches." I agree 100%. Because I did some work in Baltimore in the school system after I graduated, just volunteering and teaching out there, and it was tough in some of those predicaments that they were in, and you've put yourself in positions to really serve some underprivileged youth, and you continue to do so. Why do you do it? And then 2, how can we comp you more? Like, what does that look like?
I mean, I think sadly, and I'm feeling this like really acutely right now.
Yeah.
But I think if teachers are even just like valued verbally, not even like monetarily, that would be a step in the right direction. I mean, I think teachers are one of those, public servants that often get lumped in as like, oh, they get it so easy. I mean, like, I don't know. I get so salty and I try really hard to not be like, when people are like, oh, it must be nice to have your summers off. You know, I'm like, do you not know that teachers don't get
No, you don't.
summer? Like,
No,
we do not get paid for the summer. And like, people do not seem to like know that.
Yeah. And not only that, the teachers that I know, I'm sure you're probably the same way, they do a lot of lesson planning and meetings in the summer.
Yeah. I mean, like I was just telling you, I've been on meetings. I had 3 meetings today.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not getting paid for any of that, you know? And like, and I don't, the thing that's weird about it is like most teachers I know are like, yeah, well, that's just kind of like, we knew that when we signed up for this. And it was really interesting in April because we all got sent home middle of March. And then in April, all of a sudden, I don't know if you remember this too, but like all over social media, all these parents were like, oh my God, teachers should be getting paid so much more money.
Yeah.
And like, I have no idea how hard this was. My kids being such a turd. Like, please teachers come back. I will bring you all the wine you want. You know what I mean? Like, it's all the things, right? And I was like, yes, finally, they finally get it. Like, people are starting to finally open their eyes to like how hard this job is. And like, you're talking about like 1 kid or like 3 kids, not 30 kids, you know?
And it's a kid that you love too.
Yeah. You made this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just so interesting to me because you made such a good point. Like, it's 1 kid. It's 3 kids tops. I mean, if you're Mormon, you have 7 kids and you're teaching them all, but that's it. You know, you have 35 kids for 1 class, for 1 subject. Mm-hmm. It's insane. I was actually homeschooled when I was 12 for a year because we were traveling. And I remember we bought a lesson plan from some school out in Delaware or something, and they sent us the books and the curriculum. My mom was a substitute teacher, but she really wasn't ready for both of us, my sister and myself. And so it was almost like in college when I had the curriculum, the syllabus in the beginning of the semester, and I knocked everything out for the year in probably 2 months. And I was like, just getting stuff done. And to the point where I was like giving myself spelling tests. I don't know how you do that, but I aced everything. I really did.
I bet you did.
I really did. And my mom was like, yeah, it's an A. I mean, she's very Asian. She's like, yeah, an A. It's good. It's good for your GPA. I was like, wow, you're crazy. But going in now to COVID and coming back, the people see how much they need to appreciate you, right? I think that it should be monetarily.
But that's what's really making me the saddest right now. Is like all that happened in April, and I was like, thank God people are finally starting to open their eyes about how hard this job is.
Yeah.
And then now all you see in the news right now is like teachers need to get back to school, and teachers need to hurry up and like get over themselves. They need to be back in the classroom. Like some of the districts are telling teachers we need to have our wills updated because like you need to be prepared that like you could die this year. I'm like, that is so messed up.
Oh, your
like,
wills.
Yeah. Like our last will and testament. They're like, you need to get your finances and all your plans in place because we don't know what's going to happen. I'm like,
well, they should comp you for that. When we get deployed as soldiers, we get deployment and, hazard pay. Mm-hmm. I don't know why you wouldn't. And what's crazy too, it's not even just teachers' individual compensation. Things like school supplies and stuff, I remember bringing tissue paper and crayons and stuff, not even realizing I wish this stuff was already here. Like you were at Kylo. I mean, we're okay, but I remember definitely sharing some books or like hand-me-down books. I remember I told Miss Agena this when I visited her a couple of years ago. I was like, I would steal your books because I wanted to read and I didn't want to share my book. Like it was insane. So I don't know. Right. So I don't know if kids have to be at home and learn from their own computers, that's even if they have internet, right? They have their own computer home set up at home. Public libraries aren't really a thing right now. No. Right. So I don't know how they're going to get their own school supplies with everything going on.
I mean, I know some schools are providing them, or like how we provide meals at the school. They're trying to provide like some school supplies like that. But like we were talking about, we were trying to plan before we knew like what was going to happen, right?
Yeah.
We literally just got our like tentative schedule today at like 3:00. So like 2 hours ago, I just found out like what my day might look like. And we go back to school and like I have to be working in like 13 days.
That's insane. How do you feel about,
how quickly can you figure this out?
yeah. How do you feel about I read this article today where, they were doing online learning and, over Zoom, and they were saying that kids couldn't wear pajamas.
Why?
I don't know. Like, is that weird? Like, why would you regulate that? I mean, you can't enforce that.
No. Why would you? Who cares? Like,
That's
really?
what I'm saying.
You're going to talk? Come on.
It's a lot of busy work, it seems like.
No, there's so many things like that at school that I always have felt like are just like power trip things where I'm like, get a grip. Like,
yeah, there are more important things to worry about right
now. Huh?
I said there are more important things to worry about.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, you're really vocal too, right? I'm guessing you all are in the classroom as well. Are you opinionated when you teach?
Say again?
Are you opinionated when you teach?
Oh, yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
It depends. I can be neutral, but.
Well, I kind of like that though. One thing I always liked about you is that you were vocal. I called you, an activist earlier. I saw you were at the riot, not the riots, but the protests. And the reason why I really appreciate you putting that video up is because I was out here for the George Floyd in Houston as well. Mm-hmm. So peaceful. Everything was good to go until maybe like 3 hours after we were already done. Right. It started getting crazy. Right. So mm-hmm. as a teacher, you're also really active in the community. I mean, you're not just teaching the kids of your community. You're out there. Why is that important to you?
I mean, I think if we want this to be a better world, right, we've all got to do our part. And, when you the thing that I say to my students and I say to my friends and family too, is like, when you know better, you do better. Like, I didn't know this stuff, right? Like, I'm white.
You know better, you do better.
Right.
Okay.
So if you don't know that you're messing it up, then how can you expect someone to do it correctly, right? And so once you realize, and I've got so much to learn, right? I mean, I'll never be done learning and I'll never understand it, right? Because of the color of my skin, and I don't have that same experience. But I think realizing that like it is our time as white people to like step it up. We're the ones who have to help stop this stuff. We're the ones who benefit from it. And so that's why I felt like it was important for me to like show up, physically. And there's lots of ways to do it that are not like physical. I mean, I was really having a hard time because I'm immunocompromised. And so I didn't feel like I could go down in a safe way, even though like almost everybody down there has a mask on, at least a mask. And in Portland, most people have gas masks on because we're getting gassed all the time.
Yeah.
But like my husband ordered us like military grade gas masks.
I saw, and you were wearing them right.
Thank you. But I mean, it's so thick in downtown Portland, like you can smell the tear gas from like blocks away. And even when they have used it that day, it's just pervasive. And it's really frustrating because, and it was so hard, like sitting on the sidelines and not going down there. Cause like I knew my kids were down there. Like I knew my students were down there.
Did you see any of them?
Down there. Well, I can't tell. Everybody's wearing gas masks.
Wearing masks, yeah, you're right.
But I do know they are down there. I know that like most of our science department's down there every night. A lot of the math teachers from my school are down there. I know that tonight and Friday night are student-led protests downtown. And so there's a lot of student-led stuff happening. It's a lot of young people. It's not just, the usual. I think people think of Portland and they're like, oh, those people are always protesting or like whatever. Like, this was wild. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. And it's not just in Portland. I went to lots of protests, like out in the sticks, like out in like, it was happening in rural Oregon in places that I never thought you would see.
Yeah. One of the coolest videos I've seen is these little kids, probably 5, 6, 7 years old. There's probably like 5 of them. And they're doing just a 5 little kid march. Mm-hmm. I think that's fantastic. But I think they learned that from their parents. They learned that from you. You're not just in the trenches in school, but you really live, the things that you teach. This is why teachers aren't a 9-to-5 gig. Teachers are not a 9-to-5 gig. Well, let me tell you that. Effective teachers are not 9-to-5 because I'm sure you've seen them too. There's a couple that are just there for a check and they've been there for a while and, they've earned their stripes and I get it. But you and a lot of the teachers that I know, You're there early in the morning. You're teaching the things that are important, that you are passionate about. And then on the off time, when you're not preparing for your next lesson, you're actually out there putting your money where your mouth is, right? Putting your health where it is. I didn't know you're immune compromised, and it's serious when that is the situation. So I'm just proud of you. I'm really happy for your students.
Yeah, it's important for us to lead by example, right? I mean, like, how do you expect your students to stand up for what's right if you're not willing to stand up for what's right? And so,
yeah, I really hope I have good teachers like you around when my son gets to school.
Me too.
Same, because I don't know what I would do. But let me ask you this then, since we're on the sun is, and we'll start wrapping up here is, he's going to look back on this. I know that I think you set the bar. So by the time he sees this, he'll be in school already because he'll have to understand some of these things. So he'll have encountered good teachers, bad teachers, good leaders in his community, bad ones, adults that are invested in him. What is a lesson that you would want to share with him when he reads or watches this again?
I mean, I think to your point, I think every single person you encounter has something to teach you, whether they're a teacher or not, and whether they're a good teacher or not, right? I mean, people, my students in particular, always ask me, like, why did you become a teacher? And for me, it was a mix of two, a really incredible teacher and a really horrendous teacher. And both of them equally made me want to be a teacher.
Can we just dig into that for a second? So the good teacher, what made them a good teacher to you?
Well, of course, I was a middle school kid. So what I thought was, although I still think she was a great teacher, but I was in her very first class. So she was a brand new teacher. And she was excited. And I think that is what I've tried to keep.
Okay.
My whole career is how do I keep the passion? How do I stay excited about what I'm teaching? Because you can only be excited about Romeo and Juliet so many times, right? And so how do you make it relevant? How do you make it interesting and exciting and keep bringing your A game 15 years in?
Yeah.
And so I remember her pulling a prank on a student in class. And I remember thinking that was the greatest thing I'd ever seen my whole entire life.
Okay. I like it.
Jackass, he deserved it.
Good. See, I love it. Okay. And then what was the example of the bad teacher? What turned you off so bad?
Teacher, and it was the year before that, in middle school. And I just remember being bored to death. Again, so a lot of the stuff is very much my middle school lens, but she was super old, which makes me wonder how old was she really, right? In my eyes, she was very anciently old.
Yeah.
And she was just sick and tired of kids. And I swear she was using Xeroxes from before I was born. And
oh man,
it was just boring as hell. I couldn't tell you anything we learned in that class except for how to diagram a sentence. And I still hate that. As an English teacher, I still think that stuff is boring. And so I remember thinking no one should ever have to have a teacher like this. No one should ever have to sit through a class like this for a year. This was horrible. And
that's
so
pretty crazy. Yeah, that's so crazy because you have to be, it's one thing to be bad where people don't like you. Mm-hmm. And then it's another thing to be so bad where it motivates them to take your job.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
So true. I think everyone's got something to teach you. And so even if you think they suck or even if they're horrible to you or whatever, what is your takeaway from that? That person was so rude and condescending. So what does that teach you about what kind of person you want to be? I don't want to be that. And so how do I actively not be that? Or this person did this thing that I really loved. And that might not be my industry or that might not be my path, but what is it about that I really thought was valuable? And how do I put that into my life or my job or my relationships?
You're so good. I'm learning. I feel like I'm in your class now, finally, after all these years.
You just, it's all online. You could just attend now.
And then the last question would be, who has taught you something or impacted you, or someone I could speak to after this to kind of keep the conversation going? Because I want him to be exposed to as many people as possible.
I mean, I learned from everybody. I mean, I guess that was exactly what I just said, right? So,
yeah.
Oh, man. I mean, how do you even narrow it down? I could name off like 100 colleagues who have like changed my life, or like my husband or my aunt or my mom and dad. I mean,
Yeah.
oh man, that's so hard.
That's good. You don't got to think of one.
And find some activists, find some badass activists to talk to. Like,
I love it.
I mean, I'm an activist, but like real like they do this full time. Like find who leads the Black Lives Matter movement in Houston. Like maybe find them, or Hands Up Don't Shoot Portland is a great place to look. There's a lot of young activists in that program that are really phenomenal.
I love it. I got a guy out here. I think I'm gonna reach out to him now.
You should.
You're the best.
You're the best.
I'm so glad we finally got to do this.
Me too. This is great.
And I still can't believe I was never in your class.
I know, I'm really.
You taught journalism?
Yeah. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but sure did.
I don't even know we had a journalism class. It was weird. Here, let me turn this off for a second. But let's turn it back on. I want to know, what is a helicopter parent and why is it so bad?
So I'm going to tell you two things. So the helicopter parent is the parent who's like always hovering and making sure like,
that's where the term comes from.
Oh, what's happening, right? Because they're like always over top, right?
Okay.
And the reason that's problematic is that I think it's super important for your kid to struggle. And I know that that's a pretty unpopular feeling for a parent, I would imagine, but like, that's where you learn. That's where the sweet learning is. It was when you like struggle with something, or like you don't get it right the first time, and you have to figure out a different way. So helicopter parents were the thing that they talked about a lot when I was very first teaching. And now what they talk about is snowplow parents. Here's a new word for you.
Ooh, teach me something.
Snowplow parent is the one that just bulldozes all the problems in front of their kids. They never have to deal with anything. And so you get these. So like those are the parents who are calling the school being like, why did my kid get a C on this paper? And I'm like, well, because
okay.
Let's talk about it. And they're like, that's not fair. I'm going to the principal. And like, parents will contact the principal and make them change the grade.
Now all of a sudden you work in customer service.
Yeah. And so like it becomes a major problem, because then your kid has never struggled with anything. They don't know how to problem solve, right? And so you don't have to make them struggle hard. Like not everything has to be a struggle, right? But I think it's really important for kids it is important to fail. Like think about the times that you failed in your life, and like how you've had to like kind of pick yourself up and be like, okay, well that didn't work. And like, how am I going to fix this? You don't have to hang your kid out to dry, but it is important for them to like not always get it, or not just have everything just like handed to them. Because then we're talking about like, what if you're not around, or what if, I've heard like my mom worked in HR for a while, and she told me stories about grown adults that would come in and interview for a job. And then their parents would call her to try and like get them the job. And I'm like, on what planet is that?
This happened to me 2 years ago. Not only that, I made the mistake of hiring. I inherited a mother-son duo, and I had to let the son go. Oh, and the mom, who she works for me, was giving me an earful about how I should hire her son back. I was like, hold up. You look, I don't coach your son through you right now. Like what is happening? But now I have to not worry about not being a helicopter parent or a snow plow parent. I can't wait for our parent teach conferences still thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait for that. I can't wait.
Bring coffee. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you the in right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Because those things are long, long, long. I mean, like, we have to teach all day long, and then you get to like, maybe go home and change clothes, but usually not. And
do you do it in high school?
Like 8:00 at night.
Do you do it in high school?
Yeah.
Oh man. So you don't do one-on-ones then. You probably do like a group session.
No, it's one-on-one. And it's like,
how do you have time? You have 100 kids.
Oh my God. It's horrible.
Can I ask you, let's spill a little bit of tea right now then. So how often do you see a parent and you're like, yep, that's your kid?
Oh my God. A lot.
Really?
Well, I guess that's not fair. I would say 50-50. That's probably a little less. It's probably more than that. But the worst ones are the ones where they come and you're like, oh.
That's so interesting.
This is why. Yeah.
That's so interesting to me because, when we were pregnant, I did the reading, I did my homework, and it doesn't prepare you at all for anything. But one thing, it's pretty consistent across the literature is you're really only going to impact your kid maybe 20, 30%, and the rest is going to be out in the world. Right. But that 20, 30% is extremely important. So now that he's in daycare and it's our first time interacting with his teachers, I'm pretty hands off, right? Because they're qualified. They know they're doing. They know more than they're doing. But I'm always interested to know, what does a good parent-teacher relationship look like? What does a healthy parent-teacher relationship look like?
I always really appreciate it when I get emails from parents, because that's usually the best mode of communication. Because like parents who try and call, well, at least in the high school classroom, right? Like parents who try to have a phone call conversation, we're so strapped usually that we're sharing classrooms. And so like my prep period, I don't have any privacy to call parents. And so often I'm like, okay, I'm staying after school and like spending hours on the phone calling parents, and which is fine. It's not fine, but
I didn't even
tell
think
ourselves it's fine. But email's the best way. And then parents who ask questions are the ones I like the best, that don't just come out of the gate and they're like, my kid said blah, 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 blah. And like, you better blah, blah, blah. You know, like that is a quick way for a teacher to be like, well, okay.
Yeah. That's so interesting to me. To bring coffee.
Yeah. But this is also like that combo between like the helicopter parent and not, is when they're like, my kid doesn't understand the assignment. I'm like, okay, that's good. And like, I want to talk to you about this, but I also want to talk to your kid about it. So like, I need your child to like email me too.
Oh, interesting.
Or like CC or something, because I'm like, that is a critical skill, is they need to learn how to ask for help. Because like in the job market, like, how are you going to, like, if you don't know how to do this report, or you don't know how to do this procedure at work, like you have to know how to ask, right?
I'm so glad I turned this back on, because I feel like this is some good me here, because I didn't even think about that, asking for help, but then making sure the kid is involved in that conversation.
Because then you're not also like leaving them out, like they're not powerless, right? It's their education. Like this is also why when I do conferences, and not all teachers agree with me, but like my conference is with the student. The parents are there too, and like they're involved. But you're
talking to the student.
I'm like, this is your education. We need to talk. And like,
I like that
in this conversation. But I also
like that a lot.
I make the kids lead the conversation a lot too, where I'm like, you tell me, how do you feel like English is going? And like, what's something you feel proud of? And like, where's a place where you're struggling, and how can I help you better? That's
fantastic. Because that's exactly how real world evaluations go. Well, I mean, most of them, or at least the ones I do, because I do the same thing. But you said some may or may not agree with that.
A lot of teachers are just like, I'm the expert and I'm just going to dump the information. But there are also the teachers who are like that, where they're like, your job as a student is to sit quietly, open your brain. I'm going to dump the info out and I'll close it, and like you go on your way. And like, that's not education. You could watch a YouTube video and get that. Like, it's way more about like the relationship and figuring out like what's relevant, what is timely, what do you need to know? You know, this is why like I rarely get to teach the same thing twice, because I'm like, well, our world is constantly changing. We have to be teaching what's going on. You know, what's interesting, there's no way in hell we're going back in a month and we're not going to talk about George Floyd and like Breonna Taylor and what has been happening in this country. Like, it's just not possible. I can't imagine.
I think that's why I like English class the best, is because those are the classes I remember having dialogue and discussion in. You know, math is very A to B. It's funny, but you know, it is what it is, right? You're learning concepts and you're going after it. English class was the one that one book can last a whole semester if the discussion's right, right? And you really become a facilitator of the conversation and the learning, which is amazing. But to go back on the counseling, when you do it that way, do you find that the parents are picking up on things too?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because I think that like kids, they're their own expert on their education. They know how they're doing. You know, like they don't need me to be like, you're messing up. They know that, you know, or like you're doing great. They know they're doing great. And so they get to like brag on themselves, you know, a little bit. I always start with like a strength, with like, what's going well for you? There's always something that's going well. Right?
I love that. And then they take ownership of their own learning.
Yeah. And then identify like, okay, so where are you kind of struggling? What do you need? Like, what are you not getting? What am I not bringing to the table for you? Or like, what is this class like not providing you, because, every kid's different. And so how do I then help you in the way that helps you the best?
I love that, because it makes it hard for the parent to blame you, the teacher,
they
for what's
away, but yeah.
I'm sure they do, but it really puts it on the kid to be self-aware. And if you're teaching high school, for the most part, they should be able to self-identify opportunities and strengths at that point. I mean, if not, that's a different skill set. But at that point, they know the world. I mean, we all did at 14, right? And so, and so I can't go, oh, you got to blame the teacher because I didn't get an A. Like, mom, dad, don't get mad at me. Like, I did the work. I don't know if that's true anymore.
Yeah. Well, and like what we did this last year when they did conferences was I had them pick artifacts from like, what have you learned in this class and how can you show your folks what you did? It's like, find an assignment that like you feel really proud of, whether you got an A or not, or whatever it is. Like, where did you find success? And like, what can we show them to like make you look really good?
Oh, I love that. This is why you're good. I'm glad I turned this back on. That little extra nugget. I know she'll appreciate that.